The legal tampering period or legal negotiation period for free agency opens up today. How aggressive or not aggressive will the Raiders be? That plus a whole lot more comes up on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for March 11th, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show. If you're checking us out on YouTube, thank you. Appreciate that. The show grows every day because my man Ari does a fantastic job. And, of course, Raider Nation, for you checking it out as well, it continues to grow. So appreciate you and my man Ari. Check out Ari on Twitter, at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well, at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. A lot of calls and texts throughout the course of the weekend. We'll try to get as much as that as possible in on today's show. Just kind of recapping everything that's been going on. Segment number 2, we'll talk about free agency and the legal tampering or legal negotiation period, because legal tampering doesn't actually make sense, but legal negotiation period opening up this morning, depending on what time you're listening to this. And some guys have already been taken off the board because of their teams re-signing them, and there are some guys out there available. So we'll take a look at that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, just everything collected over the weekend. And please believe, going back to Friday, it's a lot. So we'll try to jump to it and get through it as quickly as possible. We'll do that as soon as I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $250 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. Again, free agency, legal tampering, the negotiation period opens up at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern. The Raiders and every other team in the NFL will be able to agree to terms with free agents. It's important to remember, though, that nothing is official until 1 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, and you know that deals every single year fall through. So remember to pay attention to that. Also, the Raiders have about $42 million in cap space, but that number will go up. Jimmy Garoppolo will be released at some point. We're expecting Hunter Renfrow probably to be released at some point. That would save almost $20 million in additional cap space. They could also restructure other contracts like Devontae Adams, Max Crosby, and other more if they want to create more cap space. But they've got plenty of cap space. I tell you that to let you know if they want to be players, they can be players. So just to kind of recap what happened over the weekend. Matter of fact, we'll start with the latest and the greatest. On Sunday, the Raiders agreed to a deal with center Andre James. They gave him a 3-year deal to keep him with the Raiders. $24 million over 3 years with $16 million guaranteed, roughly $10 million in year 1. That's according to Ian Rappaport from NFL Network at Rap Sheet on Twitter. And so I find that to be pretty interesting because I pretty much took it as a foregone conclusion that the Raiders were going to move on from Andre James and slide Dylan Parham over to that center position from his left guard position. But apparently, according to Deshaun Reed from The Athletic, he said the Raiders considered moving Dylan Parham to center, but they were concerned about getting outpriced in the guard market, according to a source. Instead of paying 2 guards in free agency, they kept Parham put and re-signed center Andre James. And again, I think that that's good because they're consistent with Andre James. They know who he is and what he brings to the table, and they know what Dylan Parham could do at that left guard position. So Miller is set at the left tackle, Parham at the left guard, James at the center position. Now they just got to figure out the right side of the offensive line. And Paul Gutierrez from ESPN tweeted out, or actually put in his article on ESPN.com, James played 964 snaps and was flagged for just 2 penalties, a hold and a false start. James had a 96.5% pass block win rate, so not too bad for Andre James, who will be the center for the Silver and Black. Also, Vinny Bonsignore put out he ranked 9th last year per Pro Football Focus at his position, got better each and every one of his 3 seasons as a starter, and he's only 27 years old in May, according that's the Vinny Bonsignore. So Andre James slides in at that center spot, Parham stays at the left guard, and of course Colton Miller is at left tackle. Now they just got to figure out what they're going to do with the right guard and the right tackle. We'll talk more about that coming up in segment number 2. Also on Friday, the Raiders re-signed running back Amir Abdullah, and they released Brian Hoyer. So both of those transactions happened on Friday. They put out a email saying that over his 2 seasons in Vegas, talking about Amir Abdullah, he's appeared in all 34 games, one of only 10 Raiders to appear in every game since 2022. He has recorded 994 all-purpose yards, including 342 receiving yards and a touchdown on 44 receptions, 104 rushing yards on 19 carries, and 543 return yards on 26 kickoff returns. So Amir Abdullah is back in the mix with the silver and black. I like him. I think he's a good locker room dude. You don't have to feed him too much. I mean, he's a guy that when his number's called, he'll go out there and perform. So not mad at that re-signing of Amir Abdullah. The Raiders went into Friday with about 17 of their own free agents that they had to make a decision on, and so they're starting to do that. As you see, Andre James, 3-year deal. Amir Abdullah gets a 1-year deal. Also, as I mentioned, Brian Hoyer was released on Friday, but exclusive right free agents. The Raiders decided to keep a couple of those guys, and exclusive right free agents is simple. All they have to do is extend a qualifying offer to the player, and that player will be unable to negotiate with other teams. So the Raiders did that for safety Isaiah Palomao and offensive lineman Jordan Meredith. So both will make about $915,000 in 2024 and become restricted free agents in 2025. They also did that with linebacker Kanai Mauga. He's going to hit that $915,000 in 2024 as well. So that's kind of a little bit of bookkeeping, a little bit of housekeeping, I should say, for the Raiders and what they're doing with their own guys. And, of course, they're going to be looking to make some moves. I believe they'll start making some moves early today. Also over the weekend, the Patriots traded Mac Jones to the Jaguars for a sixth-round pick in 2024. According to ESPN, the Patriots were finalizing a deal to send Mac Jones to the Jaguars. The trade obviously cannot be processed until the new league year begins, which is on Wednesday, and he has to pass a physical. The two sides were discussing a sixth-round pick. Per sources, Jones was born in Jacksonville, so he has a chance to go home. So, man, talk about the fall from grace, right? I mean, the guy was a first-round pick and a starter in New England. Now he's going to be a backup and go for a sixth-round pick. That just kind of tells you how much the market has dropped for Mac Jones, what he actually showed to the rest of the NFL in 2023. Not a whole lot. So the Patriots get a sixth-round pick in return. And so a lot of people, start hitting me up and was like, well, there goes the Raiders trading with the number 3 overall pick. New England's definitely going to have to go and get a quarterback. And yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it doesn't. And Dane Brugler from The Athletic pointed out, if the Patriots love Mayor Daniels, that's going to be the pick at number 3. If the Patriots don't love Mayor Daniels, then they trade the pick. It's that simple. Moving on from Mac Jones was the inevitable. This move doesn't really give us any new insight into what New England will do at number 3 overall. So I think that's something to kind of take into consideration, that just because they traded that pick doesn't mean that they have to go get a quarterback. If they're not in love with one of those guys, like Dane Brugler pointed out, more likely than not, they'll trade the pick and try to collect some more picks and build that team up, because there's a lot of holes that they still have. But with that being said, I was at the Combine in Indy, and I said, and I did a whole show about it, the Raiders have to get to number 2 if they want their guy. I was told that at the Combine by someone that I really trust and believe, and they said, Q, if the Raiders want to go get Jaden Daniels, they better get to number 2. Don't worry about getting to number 3. So, again, I don't think for the Raiders anything changes just because the Patriots have traded Mac Jones. Also, my final little nugget I have for you, and I told you I had a lot here in segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day. No compensatory picks for the Raiders. What does that mean? Well, under the rules for compensatory draft selections, a team losing more or better compensatory free agents than it acquires in the previous year is eligible to receive compensatory draft picks. The compensatory picks will be positioned within the 3rd through the 7th rounds based on the value of the compensatory free agents lost. They are determined by a formula based on salary, playing time, and postseason honors. The formula was developed by the NFL Management Council. Not every free agent lost or signed by a club is covered by this formula. So basically, the Raiders signed more free agents than they lost. And the free agents that they signed got more playing time than the guys that they lost, and they went to other teams. So it's really, if you want to just make the math problem as simple as possible, that's basically what it is. So the Raiders signed a bunch of guys, heading into the 2023 season as free agents, and they didn't lose a whole lot of guys as far as free agency goes, and the guys that they did lose didn't play a whole hell of a lot. So that's just kind of how that formula works. So the Raiders get no comp picks this year. Maybe they'll get some next year, but then again, I expect the Raiders to be pretty aggressive in free agency, as Tom Telesco told us that at the Scouting Combine. But that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes kind of collected from Friday throughout the course of the weekend. Coming up in segment number 2, now that there's been some signings have been made, right, how does that impact the Raiders and what they can potentially do starting this morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time when the legal tampering and negotiation period will open up? I'll talk about that, plus some guys I got my eye on. We'll do that all coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about, well, the legal tampering, legal negotiation period that opens up in a little while, depending on what time you're listening to this, 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's when teams can try to come to agreement with certain players around the league. But there's been a handful of moves that have already been made ahead of the legal tampering period, the legal negotiation period, that could impact what the Silver and Black plan on doing, and I do expect them to be very aggressive. So let's go over a few of them really quick. Let's start with the quarterback position, as there's been a couple positions already filled when it comes to the QB. The first one is Baker Mayfield. He got a 3-year deal worth $100 million with $50 million guaranteed from Tampa Bay, so he returns to the Bucs. Now, he's a guy that I was surprised that Tampa Bay didn't put the franchise tag on him. Instead, they put it on Antoine Winfield Jr. Doesn't matter. They got Mike Evans done, they got Baker Mayfield done, and they'll have Antoine Winfield back in the mix. Again, that was kind of the expectation the whole time. So that's why they didn't put the franchise tag. They must have felt really comfortable that they'd get that deal done. So Baker Mayfield, after taking Tampa Bay to the playoffs, is back in Tampa Bay. So that's one free agent quarterback that is off the market. And then late on Sunday, Russell Wilson. He's been talked about so much with the Silver and Black. He agrees to a 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He spent a lot of time with the Steelers on Friday. Before that, on Thursday, he was with the New York Football Giants as exploratory talks were going on. But instead, he ends up signing the 1-year deal with the Steelers. Adam Schefter put out the tweet, 9-time Pro Bowl quarterback, former Super Bowl champ Russell Wilson plans to sign with the Steelers. Wilson will sign a team-friendly 1-year deal with the Broncos. Will end up paying $38 million of his salary while Wilson wears the black and yellow. So there you go. Russell Wilson, Raider Nation, you don't have to worry about him. So many people thought about Russell Wilson and got up in arms about Russell Wilson. Don't have to worry about it anymore. Done deal records. He's not going to be the Raiders quarterback. He's going to be in Pittsburgh battling out with Kenny Pickett, and most likely will be the starting quarterback in Pittsburgh as opposed to Kenny Pickett. So there you go. So now when you look at the free agents that are out there, who do you have? Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a guy who's expecting to get a 2-year, probably about $100 million deal from somebody. Could be very well, could be Minnesota, could be Atlanta, could be someone else that's looking for a quarterback. But, Pittsburgh is now off the market. So Kirk Cousins, I don't think the Raiders are looking to pay somebody like a Kirk Cousins that kind of money, but he's going to be looking for some big-time money. And then you got Justin Fields. Justin Fields is not a free agent. He's a guy that is going to be available for trade through Chicago, and the market for Justin Fields has not been what they thought it was going to be. They won a first-round pick. You knew that wasn't going to happen. They won a second-round pick. I don't think that that's going to happen. Look, we found out about Mac Jones getting traded from the Patriots to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 6th-round pick. If I'm any team, I'm saying, yeah, I'll give you a 5th, 6th, 7th-round pick for Justin Fields, sure. And maybe, put a little bit of, contingencies on it, it could be upgraded to something else if he plays a certain amount of time. But like I've been saying for a long time, Justin Fields hasn't proven anything. So his market is not very big. So really, those are probably the biggest 2 names out there as far as veteran quarterbacks. There's other guys, but they're just that. They're just other guys. So I wouldn't really look forward to any of those quarterback positions. So as you can tell, the veteran market is getting smaller and smaller for the Raiders. So I'm not looking for them to be making moves as far as that goes. Starting today during the legal tampering period leading up to free agency, which starts on Wednesday. So the quarterback position, especially that veteran quarterback position for the Raiders, is going to get very interesting sooner rather than later. Also, how about the defensive tackle market? Found out about Justin Matabuke. He was the first one we found out about on Friday. He was holding the franchise tag from the Baltimore Ravens. Knew that he wasn't going to get out of town once they put that franchise tag on him, but he agreed to a deal. A matter of fact, a 4-year, $98 million deal that includes $75.5 million in total guarantees with $53.5 million at signing. So the 26-year-old who had 13.5 sacks for Baltimore remains in Baltimore. So that's one big-time defensive tackle off the board. Again, that was expected. Chris Jones, he was a guy that a lot of Raider Nation was hoping would make the move from Kansas City to the Raiders. He's not going anywhere. He agreed to a 5-year, $95 million deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. So he returns. He's happy to stay there. They're happy to keep him there. So those are 2 big names as far as defensive tackles that are off the board. And then we found out late on Sunday as well that the 49ers and Eric Armstead, they attempted to work out a restructured contract, but they couldn't come to an agreement. So now the 49ers plan on releasing him. So he's expected to become a free agent. I guess the 2 sides were close, according to my guy Jordan Schultz from Yahoo, but they weren't able to come to an agreement. So Eric Armstead is going to be out on the open market as far as the defensive tackles go. Christian Wilkins is still going to be D tackle number 1 as far as I'm concerned. And Leonard Williams, he's defensive tackle number maybe 2 or 3, whatever, however you want to position him. He's in Seattle right now after Seattle traded for him with the Giants last season. I know a lot of people are very high on Leonard Williams. I'm not as high on him. He was a big-time name coming out of USC. He wanted to be a member of the Raiders. I thought that was awesome. The Raiders ended up going with Amari Cooper there. And Leonard Williams has been good, but he hasn't been fantastic. So I know a lot of people are kind of putting him together with Patrick Graham since they have that familiarity with each other when the Giants. So maybe that's a player that the Raiders look at. Again, I'm not as high on Leonard Williams as others are. Christian Wilkins is my guy. He's 28 years old. He had, 9 sacks last season from Miami. I think him being in the middle of that Raiders defensive line would be big time. Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz. You've got Tyree Wilson. I think that would just really help solidify what the Raiders are trying to do along that defensive line. So that's really where I'm looking for the Raiders to be aggressive and get after it, is on that defensive line. I think the trenches in general is where you could see them, start to get active today. Again, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern, when the legal tampering period, the legal negotiation period opens up. But Chris Jones is off the board. Justin Matabuke is off the board. Christian Wilkins is available. Leonard Williams is available. Eric Armstead looks like he's going to be available sooner rather than later. And there's a handful of other guys at the defensive tackle position, but I don't think they're real deal difference makers. And I think the Raiders are trying to get a real deal difference makers. Along the offensive line, speaking of real deal, found out last week, a matter of fact, on Thursday, I believe, that the Rams came to an agreement with guard Kevin Dotson on a 3-year, $48 million deal that includes $32 million guaranteed, which is another reason why the Raiders brought back Andre James at the center position so they can keep Dylan Parham at that left guard position, because they don't want to get outbid in this guard market. Again, it's not a deep free agent class when it comes to tackles and guards. One guy that I'd keep an eye on, though, is Robert Hunt from Miami. He's a guy that I'd be very interested in. 6'6", 335 pounds. Got his NFL start at tackle. Lined up on either side his rookie year and held up really well. Found a home for the past 3 seasons at right guard and was a great fit in the team's zone rushing attack under coach Mike McDaniel. So that would be a guy that I'd be very intrigued by, since the Raiders, in my opinion, have that whole left side of their offensive line solidified, left side all the way to the center position, and then they've got the right side that they got to figure out who's going to be the right guard, who's going to be the right tackle. I expect Jermaine Illuminor to be brought back in some kind of capacity at depth. You got Thayer Munford. You can slide him in, even though he'd rather be a left tackle. That's what he told us. His words, not mine, last season when we talked to him in the locker room. So there's that, and who knows what else they're going to do. But I would really look at guard Robert Hunt from Miami, 6'6", 335 pounds. Would love to see him along that right side of that Raiders offensive line. And to close it out, right tackle Mike Onwenu from New England. He's going to be a guy who's available. He was shuffled around endlessly throughout his rookie contract. He returned to right tackle in week 7 of 2023. He's most comfortable playing as a solid pass protector and a strong gap scheme blocker with good footwork to combo block at the line and get to the second level fairly well. So that could be a really good addition, and I do believe that the Raiders want to have about 10 guys along that offensive line. Those 2 guys that I just mentioned, Onwenu from New England and Robert Hunt from Miami, really could solidify that Raiders offensive line. Jordan Meredith, they already hit him with the exclusive right free agency, so he's a guy for depth. And like I said, I think Jermaine Illuminor is a guy that I would definitely look at as bringing back, give him a 1-year deal. I think he loves being a Raider. I think he loves being coached up by AP. Again, his words, not mine. He told me that in the Raiders locker room, so I think that that would be a good addition. Again, he's not going to be a world beater. He's nothing fantastic, but you know what to expect from Jermaine Illuminor. So it's something to be said about a guy who's just kind of reliable. So those are some guys that I'd really pay attention to starting today as the legal tampering period, the legal negotiation period opens up along the defensive line. Christian Wilkins, maybe Leonard Williams, Eric Armstead whenever they release him, and then Onwenu from the offensive tackle position, and Robert Hunt from the offensive guard, right guard and right tackle, respectfully. I would look at those guys. And one other guy, just for S's and giggles, that I throw out there to pay attention to, I don't think it would happen. I think it would be kind of a luxury, is cornerback L'Jarius Sneed from Kansas City. He's going to be looking at a contract deal around 4 years, $87 million, probably about $57.5 overall guaranteed, and fully guaranteed at signing, $46.5 million. And the reason why I say I don't think that it's really a possibility, something that I think is really going to happen, is the fact that you have to trade for him. He's holding the Kansas City Chiefs franchise tag. They're going to trade him. I have no doubt about it that they're going to trade him, but they want to get some draft capital in return. And I don't think the Raiders are going to want to do that. And I don't think that Kansas City is going to negotiate where it's like, oh, yeah, you don't have to give it that much to get him, because they're going to be giving them to a division rival. I don't see that happening. So most likely L'Jarius Sneed is not a guy that's going to be available for the silver and black. But it's just something to pay attention to just because he is holding the franchise tag. They've already given him permission to seek a trade. So he's one of those guys that'll probably sign and trade sooner rather than later. But like I said, I just put an asterisk next to him just to kind of pay attention to just in case. But really, as far as the Raiders and what they do today, starting in free agency, I think they're going to get very active, and they'll be active in the trenches, the defensive tackle position and the offensive line. So pay attention to that moving forward. But that's what I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, just how some of the moves that have already happened in free agency before free agency even opens up, how that affects the Raiders moving forward. Coming up in segment number 3, your thoughts and whatever's on your mind and your calls and texts, 707-654-4693. That's coming up next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. And I don't know how much you've been watching or how much you watched over the course of the weekend, women's and the men's game. Fantastic ball, and it's not even March Madness yet. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Raider Rez. He's calling to talk about the draft and a quarterback that has been talked about quite a bit, plus ask a question about a free agent safety, Justin Simmons. Here he is, Raider Rez.
Hey, Q, Raider Rez from East LA. Listen, forgive me if you had already answered this question once before, but now that we're getting closer and closer to the draft and we're talking about moving up to maybe 5, 6, 7, whether that is a play to move up even further or whether that's a play for someone like J.J. McCarthy, I got to ask this question again. I'm not against J.J. McCarthy. He might be a great quarterback. He might be exactly what the Raiders need to take us to the next level, but I just can't get past this one problem, which is, are we sure we want a quarterback that Harbaugh can essentially dismantle twice a season? Is that something that we're comfortable with? I don't know if you've answered this question already, but I'd love to hear your take on it. And then just very, very quickly on the Justin Simmons thing. I know that we are more or less set at safety. You know, I'm not sure if we have the money to go out and get another safety like Justin Simmons. We've got Epps, we've got Trayvon Mooring. I think we're doing okay there. But one thing to keep in mind, no player in the entire NFL has intercepted Patrick Mahomes more than Justin Simmons. He's, I believe, intercepted him 5 times in his career, and I don't think anybody else has even more than 2. And let's not, beat around the bush, right? The road to the playoffs goes through Patrick Mahomes. And so for that reason alone, is it worth maybe a 2-year deal for Justin Simmons? Just a thought. All right, man. Thanks. Keep up the good work. Excited to hear the answer. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the call, my man. Appreciate you. And with the question about McCarthy, man, the fact that Harbaugh knows him so well definitely could play a factor, right? I mean, it's something to think about. Harbaugh could be selling him to the NFL and putting it out there that he's great and he's the greatest Michigan quarterback to ever play, which is what he said, to maybe a team like the Broncos want to get him. Maybe a team like the Raiders want to get him, right? Maybe he's trying to oversell and knows that McCarthy's going to underdeliver, right? I mean, there's the factor that you're talking about. He knows how to defend him. There's that as well. But I could just see him saying, you know what, this guy is good, but he's not great, but I'm going to overhype him and make him sound really, really good. And then a team possibly in my own division goes after him. I mean, that's doing a little bit deeper thinking. But Jim Harbaugh, if anyone's going to do that, it'd be a guy like him. As far as Simmons goes, man, nobody's had more interceptions since 2016 than him. He came in the league in 2016. He's got 30 picks. Nobody has 30 picks since 2016. I think that the Raiders are pretty set at safety right now. They have Chris Smith, the rookie that they got last year. Of course, they've got Marcus Epps. They've got my guy. Now I forgot his name. Merrick. You just mentioned it. Trayvon Merrick out of TCU, who started to look a little bit better last year. I wouldn't be mad though if the Raiders, kick the tires on Justin Simmons or try to bring him in, because he's exactly what the Raiders need on that back end, a guy that can make consistent plays. And having 30 interceptions since 2016 is the exact definition of consistent plays. So thanks so much, Raider Rez, for that call. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Kansas Raider. Says, hey, Q, Kansas Raider here. Love the show. Listen on YouTube every day. What about making Jim Harbaugh put his money where his mouth is? The Raiders should trade for Justin Herbert. Shouldn't be a big deal since Harbaugh loves J.J. McCarthy, right? Just a thought. If we could swing a trade for Herbert, that would solve our quarterback issues. Thanks for the love for the show. Just win, baby. That's Kansas Raider. And yeah, that's not happening. That's not happening. It sounds good, right? It sounds good, but he ain't no fool, man. He may be silly, but his name ain't Billy, right? I mean, all the cool cliches you want to say, born that night, not last night. Yeah, I mean, Jim Harbaugh ain't going for that banana in the tailpipe. I mean, we can go on and on and on. He ain't doing that, right? I mean, he's been talking about Justin Herbert forever. He was talking about Justin Herbert while he was at Michigan. Anytime anyone had a chance to talk to him about quarterbacks, he always brought up Justin Herbert. That's probably 99% of the reason why he took the job with the Chargers. There's no way, no how he's trading Justin Herbert. And he sure ain't trading Justin Herbert to the Raiders. That's for sure. That's just not going to happen. So I know a couple people brought that up. Unfortunately, like I said, it ain't going to happen. Now, again, as I mentioned, the Raider Rez, he could be trying to sell McCarthy as such a great quarterback so some other team goes and gets him. But there ain't no way. No way Jim Harbaugh is trading Justin Herbert. That would be the quickest way to get fired I've ever seen any coach make a move in the NFL. But thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a quick call from Jacob from Wilmington, North Carolina. He's calling to identify himself and tell us about his birthday celebration that went on Friday. Here he is, Jacob.
Yo, Q. I'm the guy from Wilmington, North Carolina, the dude, Jacob Maza. And I got to tell you, I woke up this morning, I couldn't find my phone. I had myself a night. I went to the gentleman's club, and I did not act like a darn gentleman. And if this makes you show, my guy, you got darn balls. But I have to say, man, you made my darn birthday, dude. Thank you so much for putting me on. That was cool, man. I appreciate you. Go Raiders. Just win.
Jacob, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you, my man. Glad you had a good time on your birthday. And just remember, man, WWRD, what would Rihanna do? I'm glad you found your phone as well. But thanks for the call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Guareb. He says, hey, Q, Guareb, for God's sake, why are Raider fans so absent-minded of Aiden OConnell played backups and still lost to backups, Vikings and Colts? You're not beating the Chiefs with just defense. Yeah, okay, we beat them because of the 2 turnovers, but don't expect the Chiefs to repeat stupidity. The Raiders have the Bengals and the Ravens this year. Raider fans really think you're beating those teams? The NFL wants studs for quarterbacks in the playoffs. It's what sells views. O'Connell will never get that no matter how hard he works. It'll be one excuse after another why we lost to the most popular quarterback. Remember, the NFL is an entertainment business. Until the Raider fans understand that it will be mediocre, this is why it's so important for the Raiders to get a superstar at quarterback or nothing else matters. Russell Wilson's time of a top superstar has come and gone. The NFL has moved on to young stud quarterbacks. It's what sells. Jaden Daniels 5 is who you need to go get. That's from Guareb. Thanks for the text. And yeah, I mean, I've been saying the same thing about O'Connell. I like what he did. I think he brought a little something, showed that he could win games. I think there's a room in the quarterback room for him. There's no doubt. I'm not the guy saying to move on from him. I think that he definitely has earned that spot, but he's not the guy that I think that, the Raiders need to go into 2024 as a starting quarterback. And you know what? He still might be. He still might end up being the starting quarterback, even if the Raiders do go make a move and get Jaden Daniels or some other hotshot young quarterback. That guy might not be ready. And Aiden O'Connell might be the guy who gets to start, and the Raiders might not get a veteran that they feel comfortable with, and maybe Russell Wilson has to be a starter for a little while. I mean, I don't know. There's so many different directions that they can go at the quarterback position, but what I do know is I'm with you on they need to go get their guy. The Super Bowl should have told everybody that. Everybody watched it. It was the most viewed, sporting event ever, right, on any kind of platform. Everyone should know you need a quarterback to beat that dude. Patrick Mahomes. You got to have a real dude, because even when it looks like the Chiefs are down and out, he'll find a way to come back. Yeah, and the Raiders beat him on Christmas. That's cool. But to beat him consistently, that's what I'm looking for. And you're going to need a big-time quarterback. They just got to go and find and identify their big-time quarterback. Thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from ABA Ivan Davis. He's calling to talk about the quarterback Jaden Daniels and what the analytics side of things have to say about him and what his concern is. Here he is, ABA Ivan Davis.
Hey, what's up, Q? This is ABA Ivan Davis. I wanted to chime in on the quarterback. Jaden Daniels. It's just something that I overheard over the weekend. The analytics that was done on him comes out like this. He needs a clean pocket to be successful. When they broke down the analytics of every single play, okay, he's not as accurate when he receives pressure. So he needs a good offensive line in order to be good. They said that when you protect him, he's electric. Okay, he has amazing feet, and he can make all the throws. But as soon as that line breaks down, he breaks down. Okay, my personal choice is actually Penix, but his feet are amazing. And what happens with quarterbacks like that, from what I've seen over the years, that they depend too much on their feet, which means that injury prone. That goes back to what I remember you saying, him taking shots that he shouldn't be taking. If you take him in the NFL, he's going to get hurt. That's definitely got to be one of the reasons why his stock is not as high as people think. Okay, so unless you plan on fixing that offensive line, and if you do that, you might as well keep our starting quarterback. So if you give him a perfect offensive line, he's just as accurate. He may not have the legs, he may not have the mobility, but he would be absolutely spectacular, I think, if you protect the offensive line. I mean, not protect the offensive, bad sense. If you build up the offensive line around him. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Hopefully, you can give me an answer on this, Q. Been a little busy now. I made the playoffs. Okay, fighting for this national championship. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you for the call, my man. I don't think you need analytics to let it be known that quarterbacks get pressure on them. They may lose some of their accuracy, right? I don't think analytics have to tell you that. But, again, that's why Jaden Daniels and his legs, or any other quarterback, has to have some kind of mobility. They don't have to be a 1,100-yard rusher a season, but they have to be able to get out of their own way, because pressure will make things break down, and you can't just take a sack all the time, or you can't just throw the ball away. Sometimes you've got to be able to create, and that's what the Raiders have not had since, Derek Carr broke his ankle, right? I mean, ever since then, it was done deal. Like, he wasn't going to run, and we all knew that. There's got to be someone that's willing to go in there and make it happen. As far as his draft stock is about as sky high as it could possibly be. I mean, I don't quite know where you're coming from with that. It's Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. Like, whatever order you want to put it in, those will be the top 3 quarterbacks taken in the draft. I don't care where you pick them, 1, 4, 7, 10, whatever. The first 3 quarterbacks in the draft, April 25th, will be those guys I mentioned, Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. So his stock can't be too much higher. There's conversations about Jaden Daniels potentially being number 1, even though I don't believe that that's really going to happen like that. I think Caleb Williams will still be that guy. But the fact that they're having those conversations should tell you all that you need to know. But thanks so much for that call. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Chase in Ogden. He says, Q, Chase in Ogden, I see we've reached a point with Raider Nation do anything to talk themselves into J.J. McCarthy. I have a question. Who is the last quarterback that wasn't asked to do much in college that succeeded in the NFL? If McCarthy was that good, Harbaugh would have had him pass more, regardless of how good their run game was. Like I said last week, McCarthy is just Baker Mayfield with the Michigan media propaganda machine pushing him. That's Chase in Ogden. And you know, it's funny. I've heard a lot of people talk about, McCarthy and what he wasn't asked to do. And I know all he did is win, and I acknowledge that as well. But I have thought that in my head, like, if this dude could sling the ball around the yard and really get it done a lot with his, with his arm, wouldn't he have done that a little bit more? But it's just something I thought of. But then I also go back to Stanford and realize that Andrew Luck was a sure shot, and they were led by their run game as well. Now, Andrew still threw the ball more than McCarthy did, still made some things happen. But it's funny, because I kind of think the same thing. I just don't know. That's why I feel like J.J. McCarthy is a big mystery. I don't want to sit here and say what he can and can't do, because unfortunately we haven't seen it. And I don't want to, bank my I don't want to say reputation, because that doesn't matter, but I don't want to go ahead and say, hey, that's the guy that I'm going to ride out because, well, he can do what we haven't seen him do yet, but he can do it really well. Trust me. Like, I don't want to be that guy. I'd rather find out later that, oh, yeah, he can do that, and I'm just pleasantly surprised, as opposed to assuming that he can do it and find out that he really can't. So thanks so much for that. We'll close things out with a call from RaiderB in Minneapolis. He's calling to talk about the Raiders attempting to trade up from 13 to 5 to 7 range, and then what that plan could be. And then also as a comment about the podcast and really how long he's been following me along this journey. Here he is, RaiderB in Minneapolis.
Hey, Q, RaiderB here up in Minneapolis. Been a while since I called, but just wanted to pick your brain on something, and then I have some comments. Keep hearing the Raiders want to move up to the 5 to 7 position, but I haven't really heard why. I've heard speculation, maybe McCarthy. I'm just wondering, do you know if that's what they're trying to do? Are they trying to get more ammo to move up even further and get Daniels, which is, I'm on the same page as you, Q. I'm hoping Daniels or Penix if it's later. But anyways, just curious on that. Why are we, do you know what the strategy is with that, trying to move from 5 to 7? Either way, can't wait for the new league year to see what we're doing. Secondly, Q, I just wanted to give you props. You're a humble guy. You don't need props, but you're just doing awesome. And I listened to that Paving the Way segment a couple weeks back, telling your story of how you came up through radio, had the opportunity to join James on Black Hole Banter, which is how long I've been following you, loyal listener ever since. But you're just doing fantastic. I know back in the day, my wife would hear me listening, and she's like, "This guy's the easiest to listen to, and this is a great podcast." And I said, "Yeah, he's cute. He's a radio voice. He's a natural. He's got a smooth approach." But yeah, it's kind of cool. It's become kind of a family affair over the years. My family doesn't listen every day, but they hear Q advice, like the bigger picture, telling the story, with your son, and to not be so upset when the Raiders lose. You've taught me that, Q. I've gotten better. I'm more relaxed on game day, so my family thanks you for that. So yeah, anyways, that's really cool. And you bring people together. I got to know Fargo Raider, rest in peace, Fargo Raider, behind the scenes because of you, and it's really cool. So just want to give you some props, Q, even though I know you don't need it. Lastly, I will say we were listening to the segment from Unnecessary Roughness about the plane story, drinking the Dayquil. You had my whole family, my 2 daughters and my wife and I rolling. So you brought us a good day the other day. Lastly, my 16-year-old Tatum thinks there should be Q merch. Q needs merchandise. So I'm excited for that. Let's get some merchandise. I want to wear a Q, be rocking a Q t-shirt. So anyways, Q, props to you. Keep up all the great work. Love everything that you do. Peace out, Raider Nation.
Thank you for the call, my man. Appreciate you. And I believe the plan is if the Raiders will go from 13 to, that 5 to 7 range, that's just a chess move, right? Like Philadelphia did when they went to go get Carson Wentz. I think it's just a chess move. They'll get up to 5 to 7 range and then get the rest of the way. I don't think that 5 to 7 does anything. Like, what does 5 to 7 get you, right? Maybe it gets you the best offensive lineman. Okay, well, the draft is pretty deep in tackles. Maybe it gets you the best defensive tackle. Okay, that's fine, but it's still probably a little high for a guy like Byron Murphy. Maybe it gets you the best cornerback. Okay, well, I think that's still a little high. And then is J.J. McCarthy your guy? That's the range for McCarthy. Is 5 to 7 a McCarthy range? Is that a Penix range? Is that a Knicks range? Like, that just doesn't do too much for me. So I think that it would be a move to get about halfway there and then try to make another move. Like, that's my best guess. It's, and again, it's just a guess. It's not even really an educated guess. It's really just my best guess. But as far as the rest, like the show, the journey, Black Hole Banter and all that, I really appreciate it, man. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're able to kind of follow along with the story and appreciate the story, right? Because I know everyone doesn't always, kind of appreciate stuff like that. But yeah, it's been great, man. And I say it all the time that I'm blessed, and I truly mean it. That I found something that I'm able to do, I'm pretty good at, and yeah, we can rock with it, right? We've been rocking with it for quite a while, so thanks so much for that. As far as gear and clothing line, like, I don't know what active wear or gear that a radio dude needs, but if Nike wants to sign me up for something, I'm all here for it, right? If Nike's like, Q, you know what? We want you to be a spokesman. You can endorse us. I don't know what radio guys need. Maybe a headset with a headband on. I don't know. Whatever it is, maybe a little windsock with a Nike symbol on. I don't know. Whatever it is, if Nike wants to give me something, I'll do it. I'll endorse it. So there you go. That's what we'll talk about as far as as far as gear. Nike wants to make some Q gear. It's all good. I'll be here handing it out like Skittles if possible. But no, really, RaiderB, thanks so much for the call. I definitely appreciate you. That's going to do it for today's show. Went a little bit longer than supposed to, but it's Monday. The legal tampering / legal negotiation period opens up at 9 a.m. Pacific time, depending on what time you're listening to this. It should be fun. It should be active, and the Raiders should be fun and active as well, and we'll have plenty to talk about. I do believe that coming up on tomorrow's show. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.